All right. Good evening, guys. Ken at Tortoise Capital. This is the nightly strategy podcast for August 12th, 2020. Let's go ahead and get her started. Today was a special day, I felt, because of the announcement last night of Biden's vice presidential pick as Kamala Harris. I believe the market responded to that with a great big sigh of relief from the ownership class, from the donor class, the oligarchs, because 100% of their future is now secure for the next 2 to 4 years. If Trump wins, then he is a member of the donor class, and they're going to be taken care of with favorable business deals. If Biden wins, he's so deep in the corporate pockets as the most conservative of Democrats, he's further to the right in terms of being owned by the corporate elites than Trump is, except for Kamala Harris, who is even more of a lightweight economically and is shown to be a puppet for whichever way the contributor class is going. She appeals to the largely white, urban, professional, educated ownership class, and she's a prosecutor and a cop, and she was keeping people in jail in order to preserve the source of labor for California's private prison systems. So there was a 100% sigh of relief today, and that's what I think the move up represents, was the resolution of the tension of who Biden might pick, because every other vice president pick that was being considered was very strongly connected to the populist left. And so since there's a very good chance that Biden wins and a very good chance that he doesn't complete a first term, that would have put a working Marxist or populist into the halls of power, and that would have presented some economic challenges, particularly with the success rate of some populist candidates in the House and the Senate probably swapping over to the Democrat side. So today looked like a big sigh of relief, and it featured a significant gap up, about 1.5 ATR gap up, momentary sell-off, and then a very strong finish into the close. It pushed to a new 10-day high and 30-day high today. All of the trend indicators are positive. To the upside, we have the 10-period regression line is very steep. It finished almost, the RL10 price finished almost at Z2 and was at yesterday's high, which had been the previous 10 and 30-day high. And we're less than 1% away from the Dragon's all-time peak at 339. Made a new 10 and 30-day high today. The Dragon extension is very strong to the upside. The RL30 Health just got a new breath of fresh air, and it's pointed up, and the PSAR is comfortably up, and now the entire Dragon is north of the PSAR dots, as you can see. That hasn't always been the case, but now the Dragon is pulling away from the PSAR. That's healthy. And the Dragon spine is now beyond Z1, so only just tenuously touching the feet of the Dragon, if you will, or inside the river. So this is a very strong move up that rejected yesterday's selling and flirted with the yesterday's low for a moment and then powered north. So this is the second day in a row that we've had more than an ATR move. Yesterday it was down, and today it was up. So yesterday was a net down, and today was a net up. Now I consider that significant, because here's what we're going to see the rest of this week is some kind of resolution of this tension. And here's what I mean by that. So I want you to know we had a up, sideways, up, 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 down. And what you have now is an increasing volatility. The size of these ranges are getting that way. So if you just split the difference and we normalize that, I'm going to come down here and show that. So when you start seeing increasing volatility that looks like this, this is what we're going to look for. You see price oscillating like this, and then like this, and then each oscillation getting larger and larger, and pushing all the way to the expanding volatility band. So what we're really interested in seeing is once this thing gets really volatile, who ends up winning? Is it going to be these guys, or is it going to be those guys? So what we're really looking to see is where is the center line, and is this going to come back, find support, and then start taking off this way? And so when you start connecting the bottom half, you end up seeing a channel that looks like this. So these other moves that were up and then pushed down. Now what was interesting was here, which is right on that center line now. If this had only moved up and then sold off, you could imagine how a move of this size would feel going down. It would have broken through the PSAR and then be well on the way to the Bollinger Band mean. But no, this time it actually rolled all the way back up to this expanding volatility band. Now what we want to see is, will this halfway line, is this going to hold and start doing this? That would be a sign of real strength. But if tomorrow, instead, what we get is a reversal all the way back down here, then you would have seen up, down, up, and then a bigger down. Then this feels more like it's curling this way. So we'll see tomorrow what happens at about the halfway line, which you might even call that the skin of the dragon. Is the skin of the dragon going to hold? So that, to me, is what looks interesting here. So it was a nice, strong finish. Finished at the, up here at the high of the day. Come on. Work with me. There we go. So let's take a look at the upside. If we get another move of this magnitude, it breaks through everything and then gets up here around 342. And all it has to get through is today's high of the day, which is also the 10-day high and the 30-day high. And we're only 0.2% below that. And then the all-time dragon high, which is, that's not even a resistance level that anybody outside our circle of practice even recognizes. So this is really free and clear up here. This is good to go. To the downside, we would see, well, here's the RL10 price at 337. The baby dragon at 336.65. I would say yesterday's open and the upper skin of the dragon. The upper skin of the dragon and the dragon peak, to me, looks important. 333.70. And that's also the skin of the dragon. Yeah, top skin of the dragon. Then we have the low of the day, which is also the spine of the dragon at call that 333 even. The Z1. Tomorrow, the PSAR will have accelerated up to here. That's going to be at 329. Call it 330. This nice cluster of the Z1, the lower skin of the dragon, the PSAR, that's really the solid support. So it would take a really decisive move down to test that. But if that failed, then there's really nothing to stop it until it comes all the way back here to the RL10 previous hump at 326. Then the Bollinger Band mean at call it 323.5. Now I want you to notice the Bollinger Band mean has now pulled above the peak RL270 fair value. So this is the price level that the RL270 got on the best day ever, way back before COVID ever even happened. So we have gotten this much ahead of the previous amazing results. And in fact, the Dragon all-time peak at 339.25, that was how much outsized gains there were before COVID hit. You had the long-term fair value was here, and it stretched this far to the peak of the Dragon when it rolled over. And so that's what we're looking at right now. We've actually recovered all of that plus all the exceptional gains, and we're pushing the upper limit. So this is really, when you add all that stuff together, plus tech was the big leader today. All the tech darlings won. And the relief of the political uncertainty. I really take a look at any break above this is really licensed to go. So I'm back now optimistic on the swing trade, being led by tech and the ownership class. So I am open now to routinely hold swing trades to the long side. All right, so let's see what worked today. That's the Republican National Campaign Committee calling for money. They don't know me very well. Okay, so the S&P, strong move today, up 1.4. Let's find, where was the diamonds? DIA was up a strong 1% to build on yesterday's gains. And the Russell speculatives, the speculative gain, the broad held 0.4. So this was all about the S&P today. And that's the ownership class right there. The IWM is the young gun tactical traders. Today was a reward to the ownership class, followed by the Dow 30. Large caps were in ascendancy today. And the sectors that were better than the S&P, there's healthcare at 1.7, oil exploration at 1.8, Japan and clean energy 2.1 and 2.2, tech 2.2.5. In the battle of the triple techs, it was a toss-up between the tech leaders of the Qs. That's like Apple, Google, and Amazon. And then TECL was up 7%. That's the broad sector. That's like the equivalent of XLK, but in the Qs, but triple leveraged. So TECL corresponds to XLK pretty nicely. The companies that won, here were the big winners: Tesla 13%. NVIDIA, the chip maker, 5%. So we've been tracking that one as the winner in the chip space, 5%. Nikola Motors and Apple, 4 and 3.3. Microsoft, 2.8. Catching a wave. Amazon, 2.6. And then there were some other goodies. There's Intel and Google, up 1.7 and 1. So everything tech was crushing it today. Even Facebook was slightly better than the S&P. The non-tech pieces that won today, no surprise, Home Depot, been beating that drum for 2 months. U.S. Steel recovered nicely for 3.2. But basically it was tech today. Things that didn't do quite as well in the sectors. Well, there's emerging markets at 1.3, discretionary at 1.3. Simon Property Group representing the commercial real estate, 1% even. Energy and basic materials lagging, still up, but lagging at 1.0 and 0.6 respectively. Wheat and precious metals finally turned it around. And Mexico up 0.27. Now, on the downside, things that lost today, oddly, XLF Finance, minus 3.3%. Brazil, minus 0.5, I should say. Virgin Galactic, minus 0.66. Treasuries down at a critical state at 165 down there, minus 1%. And then big losers in the speculatives: Win, 2.8, Kodak, 2.9. I think Twitter is on sale here when it's under 40. I think it's likely to catch a headwind on the strength in tech. Walmart and Devon did well. So today it was the tech leaders for the win. Here's a couple of my trades today. Let me start with a deeper look at the S&P, because I think this is useful. So I think we had this. Oops. We had a great big sideways channel here that was resolved to the upside. We had the next sideways channel in here that was resolved to the upside today, and you'll notice that's about the same size of that leg, and the choppy market is about the same size. So when you get these kinds of this resolution to the upside, some good things can happen. So if I'm looking at this in terms of wanting now to, now we're going to see what happens right inside here. Oop. So from this yellow dot, as I'm framing this on the longer term look back, I think the PSAR is now pretty crucial. At 330's just got to hold, right? That gives it that's like a 2% Bollinger Band main, and then Z1. because the Z1 represents a return all the way to the previous choppy market. So if that doesn't hold, if Z1 doesn't hold, then the next price move down here is around 305 in long-term fair value, and it's back into all this to this chop. So we'll just put that at Z3, and I want to put that right there. So there's like the 5 fingers of death. So for me, any pullback here this week, I'm going to take as a tactical buying opportunity. And I think anything north of this 338 is to the upside, right? And I don't see a downside till it breaks below the PSAR. And then if the Bollinger Band mean fails, that's about how that's on a swing trade basis. This is how I see the different price levels. So if 310 cracks and that long-term fair value cracks, I would have, I think, probably 4 positions short if this thing were to crack through the Z3 and it becomes a big, horrible mess. Because if 300 cracks, then it's back into here. Yeah. So that's what I'm protecting against. And so I'm willing to give it, because of the political events, I'm willing to give this region in here as an opportunity to buy the tech leaders on sale so that I can continue to be long if it keeps breaking out to the upside. So that's how I'm seeing that. So part of that, the countervailing wisdom on this now is that treasuries have been this, and then we were checking 170 as the key price level in here, and we said if it could break out and keep going, then 180 was in play, but it didn't give us that. It's pulled all the way back here to 165, and which is now the Z1. So this, to me, is kind of a crucial tell for the treasuries, which is going to be the play for uncertainty in the political arena. And I think that got resolved today. It would surprise me to see treasuries go another leg down. But if it does, size of this moves takes it to Z3, which takes it back into this support level here. So this one feels like the last key price level at 165. I just think that's a critical state. So if I were a treasury trader and I'm ready to trade them, I think I would be looking like this, and I'd be ready to play this breakout tomorrow to the upside. I'm just trying to get make some gains in an asset class that's out of favor all the way back down to Z1. But then I think if it breaks below here, you're going to see some panic selling. I would be really surprised to see it get past Z3, because who doesn't want to own treasuries for the long haul? Because we're looking at a 2-year process to get out of this economic hole that COVID is putting us in at a minimum. So that's the look in treasuries as the alternative to the S&P. What we had over here was that same kind of turning point. It gave us 1, 2 legs down. And this gave us 1, 2 legs up. I should have done a better job, I think, of emphasizing the key point there of the dragon rolling over. I should have been more vocal on that. With this move not being supported at the Bollinger Band mean, I found that surprising today. Maybe that's a test of the who wants to own treasuries. So at each of these turning points now, we saw here it voted down. This one voted up. When that failed, it came back and then it voted down. Down and then a quick up. So here, it's a crapshoot, I think. But I'm going to be a treasuries trader. I think that's a critical state right there. The fact that it fought its way back to the Z1 line today is key. So that's treasuries. Shifting to the intraday. Where are my trades? Oh, here they are. Where are they? All right, so I wanted to slow it down a little bit today and look at the 5-minute charts. There's some clarity on 5-minute. All right, so yesterday featured that, and this is Brazil. Yesterday was a sell-off into the close. Today there was a brief move up to that decreasing PSAR, and then a 1, 2, 3 short when it takes out the belly of the RL10. That screams collapsing dragon. So that's in the fourth bar, the fourth 5-minute bar. So that's 20 minutes into the day. And so that's short at about 31-ish with about a 15-cent stop to the PSAR. If this gets you out, I'm not offended, but then that has to get you back in as it rolls over again. I was just playing the Bollinger Band mean, like a lazy man's Wu Wei exit. Took the second one. So when I have a high, a lower high, a lower high, and it just feels like the PSAR keeps pushing it down. The PSAR never even flipped. That felt like a logical second one. And then a 1, 2, 3, as this was now 2 hours into the day and approaching lunch, that just felt like a natural one to take. Then a resumption of the primary trend. Short again with a either you could have either the PSAR or the RL90. I don't really care, but PSAR is probably reasonable. I was way late giving that back. If I'd been on 1 minute, that's a 15-minute move against me, a 20-minute move against me. I feel kind of sloppy on that. So fractional loss, that's a stop and reverse, a scratch, a stop and reverse another time, and a fractional gain. So this was just trying it on the 5 minutes as a way to just get more time in between decisions. The PSAR feels more important on 5 minutes than it does on the 1 minute. But if I had just been Bollinger Band mean the whole morning, then I don't get flipped around here and I end up getting this exit on probably 2 entries and then a re-entry, and that feels good. So that was Brazil. The other thing I was playing today was the tech TECL sector. So yesterday that sold off even more harshly than Brazil. Then it had a nice gap up, and then this is about a 30-minute, call it a quick frog, when it sold off to a low of the day, had a PSAR flip, and then was moving to take out the high of the day. I just bought it here at like 284 and some change, with about a 1% stop, about a $3 stop, which was also the low of the day. And I just set my targets for Z1, Z2, Z3, then maximum Z3 excursion as reasonable price targets to the upside, and that would be like a that's probably three to the upside. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 to the upside. So that one started working pretty well. I just picked the Wu Wei exit. By this time, as I'm putting the second position in, I just picked up the PSAR and was happy with that. The PSAR feels pretty good on the 5 minute. The Bollinger Band mean feels a little slow. The PSAR gets the exit here, almost feels like a sniper compared to that. And the give back wasn't much. It was maybe 50 cents. This was an orderly pullback to Z1. And then I treated that as a supported spring cross. It was still winter, but that's on the 5 minutes. And so when it makes a nice move up, and tech was crushing it today and had an orderly pullback, found support, and then 1, 2, 3, and crossed the Bollinger Band mean, crossed the dragon, that was just enough. And then I just picked this up, moved to the Bollinger Band mean, and then paralleled it, and it was just a fractional win. So those were the gains for the day. I was doing some work on anxiety, which I want to cover some flashcards on that today. So let me go straight to the daily report is in the handout section for you there. Oops. Okay, let's see here. Let's go to, we've already seen the daily market health check, so let's go right to our review. So we still bullish normal, overbought on every measure, 8.5% above sideways. ADX is getting very close to becoming strong. So at 25, it becomes strong. So it's at 23.3. Now, for those of you keeping track as we go, you'll remember that that went below 13 and then or went below 15 and got as low as 13. And then as the long side started working, that started moving its way back up. So 15 is kind of the trigger that if it becomes very untrending and then crosses back above 15, whichever one is leading, that's the trend that's working on the swing trade. And that was on the long side. And the combination of that plus the risk Z failing to fail has been pointing the way up for us. The risk Z is still favoring swing trades and hasn't gotten to an outrageously large number yet. So swing trades are in favor. EPP finally went above his 200-day moving average today. So now only Latin America in this stack is below its 200-day moving average. So all the world is participating. 10-day min pains, these are the ones that are closest to their 10-day high. Procter, Johnson & Johnson, Home Depot, Coke, Diamonds. That's very strong. The 10-day max pains are the ones that are the furthest away. So Boeing, Walgreens, ExxonMobil. I still think Microsoft is a buy down at these levels on a relative basis, and probably Facebook. The sell-off in Brazil, gold miners, and silver, that looks like some tactical opportunities to start building some inventory for the next sell-off. So there's a chance to start acquiring things. Don't be in a hurry to do it, but in swing trading, if you want to sell product to somebody, you've got to buy it at a favorable price. And that's what a favorable price starts to look like. Handful of dojis in the Dow. These four red lights are the ones that, if the market were to become weak, are the ones that are postured to suffer the most. So that's Chevron, American Express, JP Morgan, which was an underperformer today, and Coca-Cola. There's a 551W and a max pain in Pfizer. But meanwhile, Apple just crushing it. United Health in the healthcare sector crushing it. Home Depot, just so good. The start of Microsoft's recovery. In the ETFs, more signals. So you still got a handful of dojis. You have a couple channeling and overreactions in treasuries and gold. And that just reinforces that they are in a critical state. And so we can expect sharp moves in either direction. Brazil, because of the sell-off today, and the fact that it's got a 2.5 on the auto framer, is in a critical state. Silver is in a critical state with that 2-day pullback that I showed you. Looks fascinating. Strong case could be made for UDOW as the conservative triple strength U.S. index. These are the symbols that are the greatest above their river. the number of Z-scores. Intel and Treasury starting to really suffering. Japan quietly getting it done here with the expanded pinch points. It's become very directional and strong. These pinches all feel like they're getting close to critical levels. So I think Cliff is going to be very interesting for me. And I still like Caterpillar, even though it underperformed somewhat today. There they are. In the mechanical swing trade frames, Treasuries, gold, silver, Brazil, Latin America. And the risk to reward ratios are favorable. So I'm going to be turbo trading those, looking to see if I can make some money intraday and start building towards a swing trade position. My primary is going to be Brazil, and then I'll use Wheaton as a way to play the combination of gold and silver, but in a very liquid symbol. And it was positive for today, whereas silver was negative. Some daily squeezes of interest: the real estate, McDonald's, diamonds, and healthcare are poised for nice one-day pops using mechanical entries. Again, we're back into the haves and the have-nots, the things that are falling and underperforming, and the symbols that are crushing it to the upside. These are your winners here. Home Depot, man. And I think Microsoft is favorable now. Disney and Apple. Let's make a sandwich out of that. You know, if these are the two long-term supply chain owners of the world, so when they're selling off and are favorable, I think you got to think seriously about adding those. Multi-time frame NDX, Home Depot and Procter crushed it. Merck was very good today. Treasuries and gold are at a crucial tipping point right now. And even the globals did pretty well today. Asia less Japan, Japan, Euro Asia blend, and the Euro 350. Maybe they are heartened by the fact that a Biden-Harris presidency will be back to business as the normal graft and corruption. That's what Biden represents. And Harris represents a know-nothing. So. This is the turning point right here in this percent stretch. And 1, 2, 3. The slope of that RL30 is poised. It could be a second leg up very easily here. This is not over. This is not stretched by any means. This move here was the absence of panic runaway buying. That's not asymptotic. It's the opposite of that. It looks very much like climbing up the stairs. So I'm cautiously optimistic here. Volatility is at historically low levels by any measure, every measure. Next target is right in sight. So here's leg 1, leg 2, leg 3. So leg 3 was harder. It took twice as long as leg 2, but it's made the move. The RL90 has cooled off a little bit. That's the slowdown of that third box. So the steepness of the RL90 is coming back more towards normal. The RL30 is sort of comfortable at this level. The only caution I have is that the the slope of the RL10 is at a peak level. So this represents that little 2% pullback that I talked about before, where I'm still a buyer as long as it stays above 330. And I think that's everything I wanted to cover there. It's 9 o'clock. I want to give you guys a chance to do some prep work. I haven't had a chance to work through any postings in the chat room. Let me check real quick. We've got a few minutes yet. Let me see if I feel like I owe you that. All right. This is just as nice as can be. This is Neil with MNQ. So this is in the tech land. And he gets that third position in. The first two positions perfectly played. Third position in, it doesn't work for him. He cashes. I would actually like to see this come back in a little bit sooner. Like right in here, when that PSAR flips again rather than here. But I appreciate waiting a little longer, I suppose. But what that costs you is, here's a potential, and then here's a potential. Both of those I think are better than this. But this represents kind of a Z3 pinch and then a breakout, a good quick short. And I'm not going to quibble on 7 execution R. There's a hybrid frog entry in here, and then a second position, third, fourth. So that would have given you maybe another 3. But that's pretty good work right there. I like the quick exit. I like the quick reentry. I'd like you to consider for Griff. I love that reentry. I think right about here or here. This one, because it's breaking out from the Z3 pinch and it's clearing this little cluster. I also don't mind if you wait for here and you get the little up, quick pullback, and then an immediate resumption that crosses the VWAP. That is a great second position. Excellent sniper exit. Here's a nice re-entry. And if not there, then here. What with great strength all day. But this is pretty nice work. Here's some work, some prep work that one of the accountability groups is getting together to take a look at. 91 trades, strict kata, NSQN about 1.1, very tight risk control. Now that's something you can work with, guys. And the average win to average loss is 2.5 to 1. And we got to work on the loss rate here, I guess. But still, that's without the benefit of the Wu-Wei exit and only trade in SSC, that's pretty good. The win rate gets a little more favorable here. The payoff is still better than 1-to-1. But I think there's some more work that needs to be done there on the strict loss control. I think you find if you get the standardized risk box, that's going to help you. And slightly steeper expectancy curve. This is in Apple. So my point would be is that the kata is going to do no harm. The kata does no harm and gives you enough information to start managing your own preferences. Here's Apple. This is Pavel getting started. Well, I think this is maybe slow getting in. I think there's an entry in here because this is held 1, 2, 3 times. Entry here with a stop here, and that gives you an even better exit. That's pretty good management on the exit there. Wonderful re-entry and a nice cash. Frame your trade and trade your frame. And he watched the afternoon trade to practice not getting pulled into the trade and over trading, and there was another 5R there. So, so double this. But this is really nice work. All right, guys, good work in the room today. Good luck on that your collaboration meeting. So Griff, Stephen, and Catherine are meeting tomorrow and working on the strict kata and the adjusted kata. So looking forward to hearing how that goes. Let's see. So I'm going to do some work on, I'm going to cover a little bit on anxiety now. So that's the end of the technical portion. So I'm going to get a little psychology and whatnot. So uncommon knowledge, Mark Terrell, he's a psychotherapist, been in the business 20 plus years. For $5, he offers this, how to build self-esteem in others. It's consistent with what I've been looking at in the world of positive psychology from a couple of different sources, and he does a really nice job on this ebook. And I like his backstory. So here's 23 techniques that he shares with practitioners and coaches on how to do interventions for working in the area of self-esteem. And that's an area that I'm interested in, not just for traders, but also for for teaching my coaches how to work with kids in the soccer area. So how to start building in the resiliency. And these are 23 different techniques, and is about a 90-page ebook. So there's about 2 or 3 pages per. And he has a special section on self-esteem in kids. And what I really liked about his approach was he said you got to avoid the toxic over positivity where no matter what, you're just forcing them to try to love yourself, and no matter what. No, he takes a kind of a very relaxed, almost gardener's approach to just create conditions where they can realistically see the positive qualities in themselves that you see when they're ready. And that the self-esteem comes from a reality-based view of the positive things about you, and not so much, you know, repeating mantras of love, 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 and all that, and wishing it were so. So there's some nice work in here about the relationship between thinking and feeling and behaviors, and the feeling being very important as the source of later thoughts, and which get manifested in behaviors, but also through the use of performing behaviors which trigger physiologically some emotional responses. Like, for example, smiling and laughing yoga. When you just smile and laugh for no other reason than you're just going to intentionally do that, that actually triggers physiological response to release endorphins, because your body says, I'm smiling, oh, I must be smiling about something, or just release the endorphins. And so you can actually intentionally affect behavior in order to trigger feelings, which then can trigger thoughts. And to a certain extent, some thoughts can trigger feelings, but it really comes down in his work to the reality of feelings and the power that they have in our evolutionary brain because of fight or flight syndrome. So in flight syndrome, one of the biological characteristics that he talks about is dry mouth. And so when you're feeling stress or anxiety, shortness of breath, tunnel vision, and dry mouth is a characteristic of that. So when you feel the onset of those, you can intentionally chew gum. Because when you chew gum, you will trigger your salivation response. And when your body says, oh, I'm salivating, it must not be a stressful situation, because under stress I get dry mouth, but my mouth is salivating, and that will actually start stimulating that autonomic response to deal with anxiety. So he called it the magical power of chewing gum. So I'm looking forward to going through the ebook, and I will be sharing some of those ideas as I understand them and map them to our field of practice. I also want to cover so on YouTube, that same gentleman had 3 instant calming techniques to deal with anxiety that are connected to cognitive behavioral therapy. And he takes the position that people's environments do offer opportunities to meet our needs, and that anxiety is not an illness, but the feelings of anxiety are simply a selected for survival response. That to be anxious on the plains of Africa was a survival advantage. So it's not an illness, it's just a normal, natural, physiological, emotional state of being. Now, it may be that our environment is different enough from the plains of Africa that the anxiety response may be overdone and it hasn't adapted to the modern world yet. So that's the place we're in. It is fine-tuning that mental, emotional, physical state as opposed to treating it as an illness. He makes the point that says just because we have a thought doesn't mean that it's true. It's something that can be considered. He makes the point that feelings precede thoughts, and that the feelings are more powerful than thoughts, and that a lot of those feelings of anxiety or self-worth and self-esteem come from early youth, crystallizing emotional moments where those feelings were kind of locked in deep and repressed. So some of those things that he was showing in the handbook were ways to get after that. He also cautions, hey, just changing thoughts may do little to address deep emotions. They still got to be dealt with. But keeping that in mind, 3 techniques he remembers, or he can recommend that's consistent with CBT, is focusing on how the feelings will change. So if you take the big ideas, feelings shape thoughts, you can reframe thoughts, and that the feelings are going to change because they are ephemeral. And you can actually do things to change the behavioral feedback, which can change feelings. So the act of thinking through alternatives and changing behavioral feedback can actually stimulate the changing of feelings, which are connected to the reframe thoughts, and get after the root causes. So focusing on how the feelings will change in the future, writing down the changes that are going to happen and that you're knowing are going to happen. Looking forward and visualizing and rehearsing, what's it going to feel like when those feelings change? How much better is it going to feel in the future? And then you create that reality by envisioning. And then knowing yourself enough to say, what is the first sign of a change in feelings? And what's that going to look like? And how can I look for that change to begin? And that when you change expectations about the future, you change the current state feelings. So that forward projection, using the power of visualization and rehearsal and self-talk, that's why I install internal self-talk scripts in the girl's mind on the soccer field, so that they know what words to use to trigger certain behaviors. What's our first touch? Control. So we can carry to space, then cross to the center, and crush to the corner. And we clear it wide and up the side. So those trigger phrases are easily internalized and memorized and reinforced in every practice, so that when the ball comes to them, they have a prepared, rehearsed trigger phrase to use that will then get them out of that shock state. Oh, the ball's coming to me, what do I do? No, the trigger phrases now put the sequence of play into effect. And when they're talking with each other, they use those trigger phrases to help them remember what to do. So the teammates on the field actually help them, and we're all using the same language that the coach uses. CBT number 2 was this idea of chew it over and then act normally. So in this one, you're changing the feedback loop. So this is like the chewing gum one. And so when you notice the anxiety, you say, oh, okay, I feel the anxiety, but having reviewed it, I've thought about it, and I can declare, hey, thank you, chimpanzee, but you're not needed right now. This connects to our idea of the fireman who takes the chimpanzee away and then just lets the wu-wei exit. And then when you can relax and drum, juggle, tap out a beat, do a meditation sound, take a deep cleansing breath or two, chew gum. Those are biofeedback signals that then go back up the chain and tell the sympathetic nervous system, hey, this is not a moment of stress, so you can turn off the anxiety. So this is a moment, this is like the pause that reflects and then engage in routine, ritual, normal behavior. So for me, drumming is really important part of that. CBT number 3, catch the underlying assumption and then chase it down to the logical conclusion. And this is, asking 5 questions like, hey, what's the worst thing that can happen and what would I do? And then what's the worst thing that could happen with there and what would I do? And then you just work through those kinds of scenarios. This is what the 2-hour battle drill does for you. It's those, and the trade framing process. These are ways in which that you can engage in normal professional behavior and ritual activities that tell you, oh, this is just normal professional behavior. So I was pleased to see that those calming techniques for anxiety, which are strongly connected to the well-regarded cognitive behavioral therapy, are strongly connected to the things that we're doing to turn our behaviors into routine professional behavior, standard operating procedures. Nothing unusual to see here. Deep cleansing breaths, that kind of stuff. He then offered in another video, the same guy with the ebook, 6 easy ways to reduce anxiety quickly, and said, anxiety can take many forms like water. Then some 6 ideas. First, name the anxiety. Put feelings into words, and that allows you to chew on them and reflect it if you can name the dragon. The second one, face the anxiety. To avoid it is to invite it to return. Like you become what you fear. I'm afraid of that thing, then that's what I'm going to become, afraid. So face the anxiety, and then that dispels it. And I can remember a strong connection to when I was a kid. If I had watched a scary movie and had a vivid imagination and I couldn't go to sleep, my favorite cartoon superhero was Mighty Mouse, and he never lost a fight. And so I learned at a young age on my own that all I had to do was imagine that fearful monster and then bring it front and center into my visual theater, and then envision Mighty Mouse coming in and just whooping him and saving the day. Here he comes to save the day. Mighty Mouse is on his way. And so Mighty Mouse was my hero, and he would defeat all of that mental imagery. And so I didn't worry about the monster. I just invited him in and then called Mighty Mouse in to take care of business. So to avoid things is to invite them back in. Facing the anxiety, you've named it, you face it, and then you can dispel it with that ritual process. Find your Mighty Mouse. This one was that biological response, that breathing out the anxiety, whether it's 5-9 or 7-11 technique. And so what you do on that is you deliberately engage in a biological controlled physical process. You get physical with it. And so you breathe in for 7 to a count of 7, and then breathe out to a count of 11. That's the 7-11 technique. And so maybe that's a couple seconds in and 3 seconds out. So in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, breathing in, pause, breathe out for a count of 11, 1, 2, 3, etc. And that gives you, as long as the exhale is more deliberate than the inhale, that gets you into conscious breathing, the breath of life, and then this sends a signal back up the chain that says, that panic breathing under times of stress and anxiety is not what's going on. I'm engaging in regular tidal breathing. So that sends a signal to your autonomic system to, hey, turn off the stress hormones, because he's obviously breathing under normal conditions, so I guess there's nothing to worry about. And it actually affects that biological process. The next interesting one was grading the anxiety. I use a technique like an elevator or a thermometer, so that as you just decide what category it's in. You've named it, you've faced it, you've categorized it, and then as you're breathing out the techniques, they're in 3, you can actually watch that grade get easier and lower and less and less, like getting on the elevator of anxiety and then watching it just count down the staircase or coming down the floors. And then when it comes to the bottom, the bell rings, now that you walk and everything's back to normal. So you could see that as a thermometer and connect it to breathing plus the visualization, and then grade that either with letter grades or with decreasing numbers, and bring that 7 down to a 3. So that one works. Discharging the anxiety is something like a visualization exercise. It could be like the lightning rod that gathers up all that anxiety and then bang, sends it out to some storage battery where it can be used later, or turns a flywheel, or just through the process of an exercise where you engage in regular ritual activity. That could be like the breathing. It could be doing some that nitrous oxide triggering exercises that energizes and then oxygenates your brain. And that's a nice way to discharge with exercise. I like medicine balls, and that wiggle stick that I've shown you guys before is a fantastic way to get that done. Then this idea of be aware of the anxiety, that you use this little aware mnemonic. So accept the feelings and name it. Then watch it as you face it and grade it and deplete it. Then just act normal in some chosen ritual response the way you always do when you feel the onset of anxiety. And then you repeat those until it's processed. And then you expect the best, that you know what that future state's going to be like, and you've rehearsed it and visualized it, and you know the path, that critical path that gets you right there, and that is a rehearsed ritual. So he makes the point that you that will help you deal with this hydra of anxiety. Anxiety can lead to these other negative consequences, so best to just address it right up front in the way that he describes in those 6 techniques. Behavior, it reflects what we think and feel, but behaviors can also shape those thoughts and feelings. So panic, a feeling of panic wants you to become physical with fight or flight. So if we choose the physicality in a way that is positive and normal and not panicked, like the exercise response, whether it's breathing or drumming or the wiggle stick, we can actually use that chain from behavior to thinking to feeling to affect that underlying feelings of anxiety and get it back under control. We talked about the mysterious power of chewing gum, which creates a sense of calm, especially if you rehearse it. If I can chew gum, says my lizard brain, I guess it must be okay. So you can actually train what to do when you feel that fear instinct. So yeah, relax deeply and often. Practice that so that you have a programmed normal response to fear. So that's like standard work. The same way we have standard work for trade framing, just do a standard work for response. Getting into the 0 state, what's that sound like? You can see the connection to laughing yoga or smiling yoga very easily. And I like the elevator exercise, the outside in exercise, the color temperature exercise. Outside in is just realizing that there's a pool of blue, cool water, feeling energy, and you can just pull that inside and displace that red anxiety, and you just reverse that color as the elevator comes down, attenuated by deep breathing, and that becomes your little ritual process to get back into that 0 state. So really, I was really impressed with the work that he had done on anxiety. Mark Terrell was his name, and I will probably share this ebook, although if you're interested in that stuff, it's $5, and it wouldn't hurt you to know what some of those ideas are, especially working with kids and paying that forward to others is probably worth $5 to go ahead and buy it. But I was pleased to see that a lot of the things that we are doing that feel like they're working are connected to some of these deeper psychological processes too. So there's some good connectivity to practical applications. Okay. The final one was evidence-based teaching, and this should read 8 things that these 2 guys, Hattie and Marzano, agree on. So they are both leading scholars of evidence-based teaching, and there's 8 things that they agree on. There are some areas where they have differences of opinion, but the 8 things that they really do agree on are very clear focus of what you want the students to learn, offering overt instruction and to tell them what you want to tell them, show them how it's done, and then help the students engage with graphic organizers. Hey, that's the Cornell note sheet and these different flashcards. Student engagement with graphic organization so that you can see how experts are organizing information for recall, giving feedback on their worked examples, getting multiple exposures. Does that sound like the kata and the markups and the bar by bar? Yes. Have students apply the knowledge, get students to work together, and then build student self-efficacy. And that means that you can be responsible for your own activity and results and feedback and self-coaching. And that's what those accountability groups are for, and why I ask you to look through the eyes of a coach, and why I say it's not enough just to ask the question. You got to imagine what you think it is that I'm going to say. And what process am I going to go through to evaluate the question you ask? What mental models am I going to use? What do you expect me to say? So when our commanding general, who asked us to write what we had been doing to prepare ourselves for this upcoming season during the period of COVID, he sent out his memo to us, which I thought was classy. So I gave him a note back. He was asking for feedback, and I said, well, you read all the things that I'd expect a general officer to read, and you did the things that I would expect every general officer to do inside the military profession. But what I want to know is, what did you do with outside reading that would challenge your professional frame of reference? What were you doing to deliberately stretch and challenge yourself with critical thinking? And I said, who is your coach, and who do you coach, and what have you learned as a result of coaching? And then who is your mentor, and who do you mentor, and what have you learned by mentoring? And what's the difference between coaching and mentoring? And how do you assess your own preparation? Now that you went through it and you wrote a memo about it, now look back and evaluate the process you used and put a grade on it, and tell me what you would do that's better, and what would you do that you would no longer do. So basically the sustain, improve, and action steps. So I basically gave him the feedback that I will give my students when I ask them to write this memo. And then I told him what I was going to do was use his memo and give that to all my students and ask them to apply the writing rubric and assign a grade to his essay, because that's a really good way to teach them how a general officer thinks and writes, to teach them how to analyze his argument, how to apply and understand this rubric that we will use to grade their writing, and then ask them to put together some feedback comments to give to the commanding general. And I'll sanitize that and anonymize it. But I'm going to get like the maximum juice out of the squeeze of that grape. And so I sent that to him as feedback so that he can see what it's like to be in our classroom and to see what he thinks about what I said in the form of feedback, to see if he's going to be an interesting person to talk to. And then I shared that note back to him with all my peers, and then my boss, so he can see what kind of a lunatic I am, pushing back on the commanding general. So those were the 8 things that Hattie and Marzano recommend for evidence-based teaching that works. And I think you will recognize that those are exactly the things that we're doing in our structured learning environment, in Campfire, in Base Camp, in these podcasts, and in the small accountability groups where you guys are getting the work done. So that's everything I got for you tonight. Those flashcards, I think, are posted in Patreon already, and you can download them from there if you like. Okay? So take good care, and I will see you in the chat room tomorrow.